Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our special webinar, A No-Frills Approach to Modernizing Security Operations, starring Eric Taylor, CTO of Cybersecurity for North America at Atos. My name is Dan Kaplan, Director of Content at Simplify. I'll be moderating today's affairs, and I hope you're staying well wherever you may be. We're all in for a treat today, as Eric will so graciously pull back the curtain a bit on the security operations program at Atos, whose managed security services business is one of the world's largest. Among other things, Eric will share with us the staggering breadth of what Atos' security services cover every minute of every day. But most interestingly, I like to think how it turned to security orchestration, automation, and response technology to help it modernize and in turn mature its global SOCs. Eric is an IT professional with 20 years experience in cybersecurity. Prior to joining Atos, he spent over a decade in the defense space, protecting critical assets from cyber attacks. Kicking things off, however, will be Nimi Reichenberg, CMO of Simplify. Nimi is going to welcome in, going to present for a little bit and then welcome in Eric, and we will have some time at the end for hopefully a lively Q&A discussion. Nimi, please take it away.
Thank you, Dan, for the introduction and the brief promotion to CEO and the quick demotion, but that's okay. So again, thank you everybody for joining us. I think we have a very exciting and valuable webinar ahead of us. I wanted to set the stage just by talking a little bit about what we see in the field when it comes to managed security services and end users and how they relate. Eric will obviously touch on that in a lot more detail. I assume most people on the call are familiar with Simplify and the Simplify platform. You probably also have heard of SOAR. That stands for Security Orchestration, Automation, and Response. And really at Simplify, the way we look at the market is through the lens of our security operations platform, which, yes, it has SOAR and orchestration and automation and playbooks and all the great stuff that Eric is going to showcase how that is being used at Atos. But really we came at this space understanding that security operations has no central platform to get the full breadth of security operations work done on. So yes, it includes orchestration and automation, but also things like case management, collaboration, crisis management, machine learning, investigating threats. And we've tried to package all of this on one independent security operations platform, which is what you're gonna hear from Eric, amongst other things, how it's actually being put to use in such a large and mature SOC like Atos. Now, one of the things that we work with a lot of managed security service providers like Atos, we also work with a lot of end users. And one of the things that we observe in the field is that the concept of a standalone SOC is almost non-existent, right? You're almost always in some sort of a hybrid environment where some of the security operations and SOC functions are the responsibility of an end user, and some of them are the responsibility of a security service provider like Atos. And we've tried to build our platform to cater for the full range of this hybrid SOC model, right? So kind of pay attention. If you're an MSSP, I think there's a lot of valuable things that you will learn on this webinar. If you're an end user, there's a lot of valuable things that you will learn on this webinar. And really just to break down kind of the three flavors, and it really is a continuum, but if you roughly separate it into three flavors, we try to support anything from a fully managed SOC, where the service provider really owns the SOC and provide almost a turnkey managed SOC service, but the end user still wants visibility into managed operation, through the scenario where maybe the end user SOC is a little more mature, and what they really want from their service provider is more of a collaborative service, where the MSSP may provide a lot of their know-how around running SOCs and incident response, but the end user also gets involved in defining the processes and how those work, and oftentimes also owns some of the processes. A classic example is where a service provider would own tier 1 and tier 2, but the end user would still execute the tier 3 or remediation activities. And this is all the way to the top, where It's more of an augmentation mode where the end user has a very mature SOC, but still would like to turn to a managed security service provider, sometimes just to operationalize the SOC and operationalize SOAR, maybe do tier 1 activities, maybe do augmentation off hours or provide services in areas where the end user is weak, but still it's more of an augmentation model where the end user has a very mature SOC, right? So these are the different service models that our platform enables. I think all three are ones that Atos uses the product for. And again, I think you're in for a great presentation. And without further ado, I will hand it over to Eric.
Thank you, Nimi. So I appreciate the introduction and thank you for the audience. So I'm just going to go quickly over the agenda and what we're going to cover today. As Nimi pointed out, the three different models, I'm going to follow back up on how we operationalize that in Atos. So I'm just going to go do a quick introduction to Atos and explain what we do and what space we're in and how we address the big security picture with SOAR. And then what we see is our SOAR value proposition for Atos managed security service customers. And a little bit of detail about how we approach this space and working through some of the playbooks and the details behind those. So as we transition over to the introduction of Atos, at a glance, we're an international leader in digital services. We have 120,000 employees in 73 different countries. We work around the globe and we work in the spaces of system integration, managed services, big data and cybersecurity, cloud computing platforms, e-payment systems, and we leverage our partner ecosystem to help accomplish that. And Simplify brings part of that solution to us, along with other security providers such as McAfee, Palo Alto, Tenable. And that allows us to deliver key solutions around security, but also managed services across our industries that we deal with in our verticals, such as energy and utilities, health and life sciences, manufacturing, telecom, retail, financial services, public, and government. All have their unique adversaries attacking them with some commonalities across the top of each one of those industries. As a service provider with a SOAR platform and an analytics platform and a great partnership ecosystem, we work to help us secure these customers in these verticals. So we transition to the next slide from a trusted advisor and a trusted partner. We're 5,000 security professionals across the globe. We see a ton of events. Some of our recognized leaders is Gartner showing that, we're in the top 5 managed security services, access management. You can see some of our qualifications up here. Right across the middle, we do have our own intellectual property that we build ourselves around very specific areas that are around data protection. That's around NVIDIA Identity Access Managed, TrustWave, and security. As maybe transitions over to our cybersecurity service value proposition, this is how we see the world in 7 different areas. And what we're going to talk about today is the security monitoring analytics space right there in the middle. And overall, end to end, all these areas connect to that most important piece of being able to monitor the output of these tools. It's extremely important that not only do we put these tools together in the right manner, enable and configure them correctly, but also to be able to monitor and operationalize those tools. Just by putting in a tool doesn't give any value unless you actually have a prescriptive SOC behind it that is addressing the output of those tools and knows how to deal with those in a correlated and an orchestrated fashion. So that's kind of what we're going to go over today, and Simplify platform helps us get there. We look at the big picture and what we're trying to accomplish and how we accomplish it. You look at the left-hand side and that cyber kill chain, we're recognizing that all these tools create alerts. You look at the EDR tools, the DLP, the IDS tools, the antivirus tools, all come together inside a SIM platform or an analytics platform. With the overlay of a SOAR product, it helps us get some of that insight and context around those alerts. So the correlation gives us the ability to bring those alerts together to understand an IPS and an endpoint log element together potentially equals this, but also bringing in the understanding what the context of the insight of that alert is. Who is that user logged on? What is that asset? How is that asset marked into a CMDB? That helps us drive down to that next level is what is the decision that we need to make to mitigate this threat against the endpoint or to mitigate this adversary to a customer environment. And that helps us respond to those actions with the technologies that we have available to us. To do this, traditionally before SOAR and before working through a lot of the playbooks that enable SOAR, this is very a manual process. This is something that traditionally for fully managed SOC that you would have somebody going into a SIM tool and maybe clicking on a couple of things or setting up a couple of automated scripts to a fully managed SOC where you have end-to-end scripts and doing those type of works. What SOAR gives us the ability to kind of bring that all together in a standardized playbook consistent across our customer environment, independent of tool. So that's why we believe that SOAR is a key component for us. If you look at the top half, this is what we typically see in a traditional customer environment, one that have some resource constraints. So by bringing in a managed security service provider, like Atos with our prescriptive security operations offering, they have a wealth of constraints that are globally available that we bring in as experts into specific products, specific areas like cloud technologies. They also have multiple tool sets. A lot of those tool sets are reporting into a common SIM platform, but are traditionally not orchestrated together to get the best outcome that is needed to deliver security in the utmost important fashion. A lot of that was traditionally mainly a manual effort. So by defining these playbooks in a manner that we, as Atos, have looked at it, and being able to deliver those playbooks to deliver best outcomes, that's what we bring our customers. And that allows us to take all this context and insight and build threat intelligence, right? A knowledge management platform, not just for the tool sets that are in the customer environment, but also for those threats that are across the industries that we see. And lastly, we deliver that to the specific outcomes of either remediation, containment, or what we need to do to clean up the hygiene to prevent it from happening in the future from these types of attacks. This is why we see core as a key concept of being able to deliver managed security services to customers. As we walk through some of these challenges, that gives us the ability to show what that life is like in SOAR itself. So traditionally you have a detect, you have alert, you're doing some triage, now you have an individual going back and doing decision and analysis, and then you're doing a response. And then, eventually you get to reporting and you're revising, improving lessons learned. Life with SOAR shrinks that by giving us the ability to do a lot of the left-hand side, to detect, correlated alert, data gathering pretty quickly. Has the ability for the SOC analyst to sit in front of the SOAR console to be able to give him the exact insights that he needs to do of what this asset is, what the importance of this user is, what the group context of that user is. Are they a privileged user or not? Have we seen this before? Basic question. Have we seen this across multiple customers? Do I have to go to another third-party reference database to do that? SOAR doesn't require us to do that anymore. It brings in all that information to a centralized case management by reaching out to those tools. And so eventually, this efficiency of savings will turn into better defensive mechanisms for customers. And that's how we see the proposition with Life with SOAR for us, is where we work to enable this for our customers, and we work to put these playbooks together for our customers. I'll just kind of go into a couple of what we're seeing right away. Those benefits themselves, just kind of got highlights on a couple of those. It kind of the ability to add to the automated detection. Certain playbooks can be done with automated detection. The technologies that are available to us, let's take an example of a McAfee with a DXL bus. It has the ability to automate some of that detection and triage and prevent. Where those technologies may not exist, as some integrations where we see that SOAR gives us that same capability with current tools or legacy tools or even future tools. So that gives us that ability to triage and aid in that detection mechanism pretty quickly. Also allows us to reduce the time to consume these tasks. And instead of offloading that work to switching from one console to another or one view to another, having all that information centralized and pulling that into the API definitely reduces the time for an analyst to do his or her job. Then drives down to a great single point security analyst for a good experience as much as possible for them to pull and aggregate the answers to the questions that they have in front of them. how did this happen? Why did this happen? What do we need to do next? Also leverages is being able to tie EDR and AV in some situations where you have an EDR tool, it might not be the same as your endpoint tool, being able to pull that context together and show what an EDR tool is giving you versus what an endpoint EPP, endpoint protection tool is giving you. So coming to the benefits, I'm not going to go through every one of these again. Kind of you can see these up on a couple more benefits. One of the bigger ones that we're seeing a huge movement for us and actually being something that we spend a lot of time in is the automation of cloud orchestration and remediation and leveraging some of that workflow that we see that transformation to the cloud gives us, especially in today's time as we're moving faster to that digital transformation to the cloud. Having that ability to automate some of those, whether we tear down an immutable infrastructure and bring it back up using Terraform templates or disabling service counts. This is a key component to do that in the cloud. Traditional on-premise, SIM technology won't allow you to do that, so having the ability to orchestrate that. Go through a couple more here. Really the biggest one for me on this one is the assurance of proper control of governance. Having the level of detail that a SOAR tool gives you with its, especially in a simplified space where it has a case wall, tells you every step that happened. That level of detail and verbosity is extremely important for us to show exactly why we made those decisions for our customers, right? If we're looking up certain information, we're pulling that context together and we decided that it is a false positive or a true positive. That case wall that Simplify has, for those out there who are not familiar with that, would definitely take a look at the community edition and spend some time understanding that case wall. It helps you make that determination. That's a great tool for the analyst to be able to plug into to see every step that an API call made in that result. Whether the insights should give you the direct information to make your job easier, to make those decisions in the right context, case wall does give you a lot of great information that is more readily available for, after the fact, that the exact assurance of why that proper control was applied, what that step was done. So these are the 12 main benefits that we see, and we're operationalizing these today, especially around the cloud one. That's a very big ask for Atos to go in and do that. Those cloud mitigations, we see that as a key transformative measure with the SOAR platform.
And Eric, we won't ignore the elephant in the room, which is obviously COVID-19. But you talked about the case wall and that single place where everything is captured. What we hear from a lot of our customers is that obviously nobody foresaw this pandemic, but the fact that you can actually access everything that every analyst did in response to a certain threat in one central place is particularly useful in this day and age where everybody's remote socking, right? You can't go and tap the shoulder of the analyst next to you and point at something and say, hey, did you see this? Are you finding this as well, that maybe some unplanned benefits in this day and age around having all the interaction around a case easily kind of captured and searchable in one place?
I mean, as we start to work with and rolling this out with our customers and understanding, I see that's going to wind up being a huge value, because that helps not only just in the current situation, but from an analyst to an analyst, somebody that may be a little bit more junior, that may have, what is this tool trying to tell me, and being able to pass that on to somebody else that is a more senior that's familiar with that tool. So if you have an expert in one tool, you don't really have to depend on that expert's, I got to know everything and be a mile wide in knowledge without being a mile deep in it. You can help, that case wall can help, show that. And we did in our approach is we've brought on some developers as a part of that team, and they really value that case wall and understanding, how that information is coming back. That's extremely valuable for us, not only as a SOC analyst, but then also as the developers to go and say, how can I use this useful information to present to the analysts, so they may not have it readily available to them today, but through the way we were going to do continuous improvement over this platform, being able to pull that information back in. So as we mature our solution, our services over time, a part of that maturity process is getting back with the analyst and saying, what value can I do? And that's kind of alluding to the next slide that I kind of want to touch on. Is, one of the things that we looked at as we went through this process over the last year of building this solution out and getting ready for the authorization of this solution is don't tell me what you can't do, but tell me what you want to do. We took a very different approach to playbooks. This is one of the bigger things that I think from a picture perspective that helps us out is let's write down all the steps that we think we want to do, understand where we are at today with the maturity process of both technologies and efficacies of tools downstream, and then also in the SOAR products, and then the tools to the right of that, the enrichment tools and the resolution tools. So one of the biggest things we took in that approach is being able to understand these are the steps we want to do. We want to be able to pull these steps out. And some steps may not be available to us today because APIs may not be exposed. Understanding that we may need to pick a different type of integration based off of the fact that this API is not exposed, or work with product vendors, or Simplify directly, which is a great company to work with, is, hey, this is why we would want to have integration with a CMDB so that we can pull out asset information that's marked in there that may not be available today. So putting that into a pseudocode that then helps us build this code, which is the actual interface that we see when we put this together. This gives us these steps, and recognizing that not everything that we want available in these steps are available at this moment, but on the roadmap of us doing continuous improvement, whether it is tooling, not having the right API available to us, or us not having something in a customer's environment. The steps for us to go and do this work at a very minimum are around the case prioritization, enrichment of the context, understanding the quality of the threat intelligence that we're gathering, aggregating SIM information, being able to query tip platforms and TTPs, and then be able to provide decision insights for the analyst. Over time, these steps get a little more granular because of the availability of the information in the tooling itself as we go through and enrich our steps. And so that's kind of the way we took this approach.
Yeah, and I think you had a great point here is that people don't often realize that there's a lot of value in ensuring that analysts follow a consistent, repeatable process, even if not every step along the process can be automated, right? So the fact that analysts follow the process, getting their steps that they have to take manually. First of all, it's not just a PDF or a Visio diagram that's lying somewhere and you're hopeful that people can find it and follow it. It's right there in the same platform. It's still measurable. It's still trackable. And like I said, maybe some steps I just can't automate today, or I don't want to automate because I don't, I still want an intelligent analyst to take a look and make a decision. But don't be afraid of not automating the full process, right? There's a ton of value in making sure you have repeatable, consistent processes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely a great point. And that's the approach that we've been taking, is being able to help the analysts make decisions consistently based off the information they're provided. And then over time, automating those things that could be automated because we've seen them be successful over time. So that kind of leads us back around to your slide about what we talked about earlier, is how the three different approaches are enabled, and in a way we see that as we put these tooling together and understand some of the MITRE context and the efficacy of the tools and mapping them back around. So in these three situations, as you pointed out earlier, this is the approach that we're looking at. Is one is understanding context is key, being able to gather as much as possible for that insight for that environment, that specific attack. Not only is that key across the fully managed, but a collaboration and the augmentation of a security staff, right? So if we are doing fully managed, context is key for us to make the proper decisions. How it helps us understand what actions we need to apply in containment actions. Allows us to use that platform for full transparency in our managed security operations. Also allows us to map the incidents to real world threats and observations to tune the defenses on the customer's behalf. So understanding that we may see something like a live off the land attack that we've never seen before that's not been documented. And so being able to have those details that once we go through the process of documenting those steps and what those remediation actions are, how do we properly tune or have the right coverage for the technology we have available. But if you were to look at a collaborative approach, the only thing that really changes is, we're helping to identify the gaps in the coverages and security where a customer may decide, this is the technology I put my investment in and I want my ORI on that, continue to use it. or, I like this vendor or this technology in my environment, I may not have the ability to pull out the right data that I need to fully enable my services. So by looking at it from the perspective of, okay, here's where here's identified gaps, here's the things that if I had these right capabilities in an environment, I can give you a little bit more insight into this collaborative approach. And so looking at the output from the platform and the cases that wind up giving us the details behind it, we can start mapping that back. And then the last case is, as we work with some mature customers that, may only want to see a couple of steps, right? Give me a ticket or give me the detail behind it, do the threat intelligence, and then they take on to that next step. All three of these I find that are really kind of aligning to the next important step is really trying to find that actual, right balance to the attack versus to the information that's provided without overwhelming, the system or the analysts or users. So if we kind of move over to the next slide.
I just want to add maybe, hold on. Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah, so I just want to add one more thing. I think one of the key things that we hear both from the managed services side and the end user side is the need for transparency, right? And I think kind of the black box days are kind of gone, right? And end users want to have visibility and transparency into what their service provider is doing. Service providers want to be that transparent, trusted partner who's not doing everything kind of a, trust me, black box type of approach. And I think that's one thing that's common across all these three models. I don't know if you can provide a little bit of your take and experience on this.
Yeah, so I think that's exactly right. Having the transparency, because a lot of the times there are certain situations that you get into that you're having conversations about why something wasn't being able to be detected, or a pen test in this manner wasn't being able to be found because you may have a legacy tool or technology, but if the output is captured for those tools and technologies, and you can go back through that, the steps that an analyst made to make that decision, or potentially why that wasn't captured, or those steps are. And this is an end-to-end. This is not just simplified. I mean, it has to be from the SIM. It has to be from the endpoint tool, right? So that transparency, if you never got the alert, you're never going to have the information inside of the SOAR platform. But the ability to start that process and have that alert, and then being able to show the step-by-step is also a value from the opposite side of saying, look, this is how much that we're getting for you, how much more we're meeting from an SLA. This is the tools and that actual reports and metrics to say, your endpoint tool is doing a great job. Your EDR tool and your endpoint tool are aligned, or they're not. Or, one tool is telling you one thing and the other one's not, right? And so that transparency and both the decision process, which is a big part of that, is extremely beneficial in my mind, that we're going to see our customers give us great feedback in the future as we go through this process and mature our services around this type of model.
Excellent. Thank you.
And so I guess the last couple is I do have a personal view on leveraging the MITRE ATT&CK framework and my experience and seeing this over time. I know you guys talked about MITRE in the past. You have some webinars on it and how you enable that in your platform. That's something that as our industry, we're seeing a lot of value inside that side of it. I just want to kind of work through some of the use case of what we're looking to provide as we mature our platform and what this example would be. And so in an older concept of a manual SOC and an environment where you're just getting certain logs and you're starting having to do the pullback of the incident response process to find these steps. Typically you would see an IPS alert in a commonly used port, and that would indicate some kind of command and control. That is something that is all predicated on something that is attacked earlier inside an environment, right? It's spear phishing link, where document download, PowerShell. I mean, these type of things happen on a daily basis when it comes to attacks, and people falling victims to this. And so being able to use the SOAR platform and the alerts and the grouping of the context of those alerts, and what one thing that Simplify brings uniquely together is being able to read those contexts, is you can start seeing that bigger picture where those events come in. Now, a SIM does have a lot of this information, and one can argue that you can get a lot of this information out of SIM, and you can configured to give you that quickly and in the right place. but being able to pull that together with not only the context of these alarms and these alerts and exactly where they happen in this stage of the attack framework, but then also the context of the user and understanding, their group permissions and what they have access to and the potential lateral movement, and understanding maybe that big impact picture as you look at the context of this one event that has started with an IPS alert, but then finding out that you have a lot of different areas as the simplified tool goes and finds all those contextual information about the alerts that are coming in to paint you that picture for this one case. So building this over time kind of not only relates to MITRE ATT&CK, but then also relates to being able to give real world observations based off of what happened in your environment. So that's kind of what we see as the benefits is, the SOAR itself simplifies the platform around the case wall, being able to pull that context together, the grouping, the pattern and grouping context of the alert itself, the ease of use of being able to deploy this in a customer environment, APIs, and the breadth of the marketplace and the current configurations behind it. And then, you see a lot of benefits as a service provider, being able to paint that picture across multiple customers and those entities that we're seeing it one industry versus another industry and relating those to potential attacks across either the globe or across the customer base, such as in the US, like I deal with, or just in an industry, energy and utilities, or vice versa. Overall, this is enablement for our prescriptive SOC security operations. Atos prescriptive SOC, there's some information about that. You can go out there and Google it. We have some good information. It's not just a source, or is a key component of it. Big data analytics, it's end-to-end user behavior analytics. It has a lot of capabilities in it, and global sharing of our security operations, our threat intelligence. So hopefully you got an understanding of the benefits and the summary of what it takes for us to get this stood up, what it takes for us to mature it over time. As with any technology, it's a growing and evolution and continuous maturity process, and you see the effort and the work that we have to put into to make this enabled. But the benefits are for the customers, being able to understand the context of who's being attacked in their environment, what their permissions are, understanding around what type of adversaries are attacking you as a customer or those customers. And so that's the picture that allows us to give great services to our customers and the Atos prescriptive SOC.
All right, Eric, thank you so much. And Nimi, you as well. We'll have a little after hours Q&A session right now. We encourage you to stick around and get your questions in via the Q&A chat feature. Eric, I'll start with you. I read a tweet from a fairly well-known security analyst who said that CISOs are telling him two things are helping them through the current situation of working from home and COVID-19. And that is cloud-based security technologies and managed services. So I'm wondering what you're seeing and what you have seen change at Atos since the work from home orders have been dropped down. We alluded to it a little bit, so I'd love to hear a little bit more from you. And then Nimi, come in again and maybe work in a little bit again how SOAR can help there.
Yeah, so I think definitely from the first one is the collaboration. It's no longer an option to be in an office and next to somebody. You have to use the technology and the tools that are given to you by your organization to collaborate. And what we find is that people start to understand those tools a little bit more, understand how they can collaborate a lot better. And so those technology enablers that are driving us to being more efficient at home are just by virtue of us being the necessity of being home, drive us to understand how to use those in a more efficient factor. And when we get back into the office, hopefully sometime soon, and let's all be optimistic that this crisis will be over sometime soon. And, hopefully we'll continue to use those tools in a more efficient manner as we, look around. But I also think that we'll probably see this as a normal way going forward because, the fact that we're able to collaborate and we're able to do the work efficiently as we are remotely just, begs to question whether we take those investments of coming back in or not in the future.
Yeah, Nimi, surprising to you that cloud security and managed security are the two hot areas?
So I think as far as COVID-19, Eric hit on the collaboration point. I think that's more important than ever. And transitioning from an environment where your security operations teams really works across 20 different tools that don't talk to each other, and moving to that single platform where all the work is captured and can be searched and analyzed obviously goes a long way in these days. And I would just add one more thing, which is not specific to COVID-19, but it's helpful. One of the things that SOAR solutions allow you to do is quickly build and disseminate processes as new threats or new scenarios come in, right? So what some of our customers have done, for example, is quickly build a playbook that checks, for example, that your VPN connectivity is up to snuff, and then roll that out and automate that either fully or to a large extent. It just allows you to be more agile when you have to respond to new scenarios and new threats. And COVID-19 obviously introduced a lot of new scenarios that security operations teams have to react to, like remote working or specific attacks that are related to COVID-19. So that's the second point that I would highlight as specifically relevant for COVID-19.
Yeah, Nimi, I'll stick with you here, and then we'll go to Eric for his examples. But we had a question come in. What are the solutions that you can integrate with a SOAR tool, especially security solutions? I would imagine it's many, Nimi.
It is many. I think we're at over 200 integrations. They're all up on our website at simplify.co if you want the specific list. But the common technologies that people that are integrated are, so from security, it's all the detection technologies, right? So your SIEM, your EDR, maybe phishing solution. So things that can detect, then things that can be used for investigation. So think threat intelligence, telemetry, network telemetry, endpoint telemetry, and then finally, not surprisingly, things that can use to remediate, right? So again, things like EDR for isolating endpoints, or network firewalls, or secure web gateways for blacklisting malicious URLs, that sort of stuff. So just really kind of the full gamut of detection, investigation, and response. And if you want the complete list, it's up on our website, so feel free to check it out.
Yeah, and Eric, I would imagine because Atos must deal with so many disparate client environments, folks big and small doing things differently, that SOAR in a way can be that great equalizer because it can integrate with so many various solutions. Are you finding that to be true?
Yes, and the potential to integrate is another one, right? So right out of the marketplace, having the ability to integrate directly, but then also looking at the fact that you have an API for HTTP traffic, or just HTTP REST in general, and that RESTful protocol, and leveraging that for things like that are not in your marketplace. As an example, OT type stuff like Nizami, which does OT analytics, and understanding that it does a detection mechanism. So not only do you have great marketplace, but you also have the key integrations that allow us to kind of build that on our own as necessary. Although we would prefer to have it in the marketplace, but if necessary, that capability exists. So pulling in those things that are dispersed or available. And I think the point on to add on to Nimi's comment, context, right? So threat intelligence context, but then also asset context and user context, and the additional details that help out that are should be integrated and be a part of that workflow.
Okay, a couple of quick rapid fire questions. There was a question whether Atos has presence in Middle East and India for SOC services.
We do. We have a couple of large customers in the Middle East, and then I'm pretty sure we have some work going on in India with our Cintel acquisition that happened 2 years ago. I don't have the specifics, but there are some reference points that are available on the Atos websites for where we are, and if the country code, and I think it's Atos/countries or locations, can be looked at and found out exactly where we're at throughout the globe.
Yeah, we'll follow up directly with those folks as well. And okay, and just to conclude, a couple more minutes if anyone wants to ask a last second question here. But I'm wondering what Atos does. And you kind of referenced some of the collaboration stuff, but in terms of managing some of those communications between you and your customers, how do you guys go about that? And maybe how has that changed again in light of the current pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, we typically have account teams that are working directly with customers. We see an increase in meetings and conversations remotely as opposed to being physically at site. So that's definitely an increase, and having more conversations about, how we can mature and work together as a service provider and customer to achieve the goal, right? So during the COVID-19, recognizing that everybody was prepared for having the ability to work remotely, stepping in as with our large partner ecosystem and being able to deliver SASE type remote access solutions to get customers up and accessing remotely. And what would typically take 6 to 9 months as a project, being able to bring that down to, a month or two to be able to deliver us in the pandemic. So that's the change in conversations, is how fast can we transform, not just from a SASE remote access solution, but also to the cloud because of, the ability to move forward. That's a lot more of the conversations we're having today is, remotely talking and having bigger conversations about how we can help enable customers to survive in this new world that we're living in.
Yeah. Well, it is a fascinating conversation and probably one due its own webinar or many webinars, really, if we're considering that this is possibly turning into a paradigm shift in the way that security operations, like so many other ways of business being done. All right. Well, let's stop there. Did we get a last second question? Okay. Let's stop there. And I want to thank Eric Taylor, CTO Cybersecurity at Atos, Nimby Reichenberg for coming in and making a guest appearance, CMO of Simplified. Gentlemen, thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to remind everyone listening that this will be available on demand shortly after its conclusion. And you see up on the screen here, please check out simplify.co/community to freely download our community edition and really experience firsthand our SOAR product if you are interested. So please check that out as well. Everyone, thank you for listening and stay well again wherever you are, and we'll talk to you again soon.